You're watching Forsaken Joe. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy the story. Let's begin. I'd barely closed the door behind me when the weight of the day hit me again. The classrooms, the grading, the constant stream of complaints from both students and admin. It was all still buzzing in my head. Amanda was at the kitchen table, typing away at her laptop. As usual, the same scene, day after day. She didn't look up when I walked in, and that alone said everything. I set my bag down and took a breath. "Hey, I brought you some wine," I said, hoping it would get some kind of reaction. Nothing. She didn't even glance at the glass I placed beside her. I sat down across from her, trying to get her attention. "How was your day?" "Busy," she muttered, eyes still glued to the screen. Her voice was flat, distant. I could tell she was swamped with work, so I decided not to push. I had learned that much over the years. Give her space when she shuts down. The silence stretched between us. The hum of her laptop was the only sound. A minute passed before she sighed, finally looking up at me. Her eyes were sharp, cold. "We need to set new rules," she said, her tone almost clinical. I stared at her, confused. "What do you mean?" She leaned back in her chair, folding her arms, her expression calculating. "There are things that need to change. If we're going to keep going, together, there need to be boundaries, emotional requirements." My stomach twisted. "What are you talking about? What requirements?" She gave me that look again, like she was already disappointed in me for not understanding. "It's not hard, Jack. It's about how you listen, how you engage. You've been checked out for months. If you want me, if you want us, there are things you'll need to do differently." I stood there, dumbfounded. This wasn't what I expected, but it wasn't exactly a surprise either. The marriage had been slipping for a while, and I'd convinced myself we'd work through it. I thought maybe I just needed to try harder, be more patient. But this was something new, something cold. "What exactly are these requirements?" I asked, my voice coming out more strained than I intended. Amanda let out a slow breath, like she was explaining something to a child. "First, you need to acknowledge how you've been emotionally distant. Your energy, your presence, hasn't been enough. You're here, but you're not really here." She paused, eyes flicking over me with a cold calculation. "If you want intimacy, it has to start with you making the effort. More listening, more engagement." I blinked, unable to fully process what she was saying. She was making demands, but it felt less like a conversation and more like an ultimatum. A checklist of things I needed to meet if I wanted her to even acknowledge me. "Intimacy?" I muttered, feeling the ground shift under me. "What does that even mean anymore?" "Exactly what I said." Her voice was sharp now, less patient. "If you can't meet these conditions, then there's no point. I'm done pretending." Her words hit me like a slap, and I didn't know how to respond, so I didn't. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, the tension in the air thick enough to suffocate. I sat in the living room, the weight of her ultimatum sinking in. This wasn't a conversation, it was a verdict. And I didn't even know where to start. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. There was nothing to say. Amanda's eyes stayed locked on mine, like she was waiting for me to process what she'd just thrown down, but I didn't get it. Not all of it anyway. "You've been checked out," she repeated, her voice now steady, almost like she'd been rehearsing this speech. "I've been paying attention. To everything. How you listen, how you show up, or don't. It's not just about what you do. It's about how you do it. Your energy, Jack. Your energy's been flat, like you're somewhere else every time we're in the same room." She sat up straighter, folding her arms tighter. "I've earned the right to make these demands, after everything I've put up with." I stood there, trying to hold on to something that made sense, but all I could feel was humiliation creeping in. She was right about one thing. I'd been distant, but I hadn't realized it was this bad. Hell, I didn't know any of this was bothering her until she laid it all out like this. "Look," I started, but my voice felt weak. "I didn't know you were—" I stopped myself. I couldn't finish the sentence. It didn't matter. Amanda's lips pressed together, like she was holding back something sharper. "Of course you didn't. Because you never listen. You never hear me." She let out a breath. "So, here's the deal. You either meet me where I need you, or we're done. Intimacy, physical, emotional, all of it will be off the table. I'm not wasting my time anymore. I felt the air leave my lungs. A tight knot of frustration and confusion curled in my chest. You're saying, if I don't change, you won't even try. The words felt foreign coming out of my mouth, like I was asking something I didn't even understand. Amanda didn't hesitate. She was firm, unyielding. That's exactly what I'm saying. These are non-negotiable, Jack. I need someone who can be present, who can meet me where I'm at. I've given you months to figure it out, and now you either step up or there's nothing left. Her voice wasn't angry, but it wasn't caring either. She spoke like it was just business, like we were two people discussing a contract. I shook my head, trying to make sense of it all. You don't get it, I muttered half to myself. I don't know how you can even say this. We're talking about us, Amanda, not a checklist. She didn't flinch, didn't soften. She just stared at me, like she had already made up her mind. I don't have time for games anymore, she said coldly. I'm giving you what you need to do. Either you meet me halfway, or we're finished. I felt a punch in my gut. It was like she was laying out all the ways I had failed her without even acknowledging how much she'd shut me out, too. But there was no room to argue, no space to even try to get through to her. So that's it? I asked, my voice trembling, just enough for her to notice. I'm supposed to jump through hoops to get you back. If that's what it takes, she answered, her voice stone cold. If you want to be with me, you'll do what I need. I wanted to scream, to fight back. But what was the point? She wasn't hearing me. She wasn't even trying to. She was just telling me what I had to do, and I was either going to comply or be left in the dust. I couldn't breathe. Without saying anything else, I turned and walked out. My feet were heavy, but my head was heavier. I didn't know where to go, so I just ended up on the couch. I lay there, staring up at the ceiling, unable to sleep, my mind racing through every moment we'd had together, every quiet evening, every ignored conversation. How had it gotten to this? How had we ended up here? She had made her demands clear, and I could feel her absence in the space around me. Her presence had been so strong in the house for so long, but now everything felt hollow, like she was a ghost already. I didn't know if I was angry, hurt, or just numb. All I knew was that nothing felt the same anymore, and for the first time in years, I wasn't sure if I even wanted it to. I stopped texting Amanda during the day. It wasn't deliberate at first, but after a while, it just felt unnecessary. I didn't need to check in. I didn't need to ask how her day was. She didn't ask about mine anymore, and I was too tired to pretend like I cared about hers. I didn't want to know what she was doing because it didn't matter. She had made it clear that she needed me to change, but when I looked at her, all I saw was a stranger. At work, I threw myself into the routine. I stayed late, grabbed drinks with colleagues after meetings. It was easier. At least there, I didn't feel like I was walking on eggshells. My job hadn't changed, but I had. One afternoon, Lisa, a coworker I'd always thought was just friendly, stopped me by the break room. "You're looking good, Jack. What's your secret?" I almost laughed. I hadn't even noticed how different I looked. But she wasn't the first person to comment on it. Another colleague had mentioned it the week before, something about me having a new energy. It felt strange, almost like I was a different person. More present maybe, more alive. It was the first time in a while that someone had seen me, really seen me. But when I thought about it, I realized it wasn't just my energy that had changed. It was everything. At home, I used to rush back, eager to be with Amanda, even if we weren't talking. Now, I didn't rush. I didn't care. The first time I noticed the shift was when I got home one evening around 8. Amanda was sitting at the kitchen table, a bowl of pasta in front of her, untouched. "You're late," she said, her voice strained, like she was trying not to sound disappointed. I stood in the doorway, feeling the weight of her gaze. "Yeah, late meetings. Didn't think to text." She stared at me for a beat, then said, "I made this for us. It's getting cold." Her voice was thin, like she was grasping at something, anything, to make me care. I didn't care. I didn't want to eat her pasta or talk about why I was late, or apologize for not checking in. So I shrugged. "I didn't think you'd care," I said, as calmly as I could. The words hit harder than I expected. The silence stretched between us, thick with all the things we hadn't said. Amanda's shoulders tensed, but she didn't say anything. I didn't wait for her to respond. I just walked past her and into the bedroom, closing the door behind me. I could feel the distance between us growing every day. It wasn't like a sudden break or a fight. It was just a slow fade. Neither of us seemed to have the energy to keep pretending anymore. Amanda didn't try to stop me from retreating. In fact, she barely even reacted to the words I'd thrown at her. Her disappointment was quiet, like a resignation that settled in and took up space between us. And in that silence, I realized that I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel anything at all. The next few days passed with the same hollow routine. I worked. I came home late. I didn't ask about her day. She didn't ask about mine. There were no more late-night talks or attempts at connection, just the quiet, just the space that neither of us seemed willing to cross. And for the first time, I didn't feel the weight of her absence as a loss. I just felt empty. But I wasn't sure I cared about that either. A few nights later, I came home to the smell of something cooking in the kitchen. I didn't ask what it was, but Amanda was at the stove, stirring something in a pot, wearing that old silk robe I used to love. She didn't notice me at first, and I didn't say anything. It was like we were two strangers in the same house, both pretending the other didn't matter as much as they used to. She glanced up after a minute, her eyes softening when she saw me. "I made your favorite," she said, like it was something I would care about. "I thought we could have a nice night. Just the two of us." I stood by the door, arms crossed, not moving. I wasn't hungry. I wasn't even interested in pretending anymore. But she didn't seem to pick up on the coldness I was giving off. She took a step toward me, her hand reaching out, like she was trying to close the gap between us. I didn't move. Her fingers hovered near my chest, and I could feel the tension in her touch. She was waiting for something, for me to react, for me to reach out, like I used to. But I didn't. I turned my back slowly, walking toward the bedroom without a word, not looking at her as I passed. "Jack!" she called after me, her voice thin with uncertainty. I didn't turn around. Her hand fell to her side, like a dead weight. I heard her breath catch behind me, and for a moment, I thought she might say something else, but she didn't. She didn't try again. That night, I lay in bed with the same cold silence between us. She didn't come in, and I didn't care. It was the first time in a long time that I didn't feel the pull to fix things. For the next few days, Amanda tried again. At first, it was small things, trying to talk to me when I came home, asking how my day had been. But I just nodded, gave short answers. When she'd try to touch me, to initiate something, I'd pull away, every time. No more playing along. Then it was dinner. She'd cook something extra nice, set the table with candles, hoping that maybe, just maybe, I'd want to sit and eat with her like we used to. But I didn't. I didn't care enough to pretend anymore. She'd ask if I wanted wine, and I'd decline. She'd ask if I wanted to talk, and I'd stay quiet. I wasn't angry, I wasn't sad. I was just done. Done with all the games. Done with pretending. One night, after another attempt at creating a special evening, she slid the plate in front of me, looking at me with that hopeful expression she used to wear, the one that used to make me melt. "Jack, can we just talk? Please? About what's going on?" Her voice was small now, and I could hear the desperation in it, but I didn't bite. I picked up my fork, took a bite of food, and said nothing. I didn't care. I wasn't going to play into her need to fix this, to make it like it used to be. She sat across from me, her shoulders slumping, eyes avoiding mine. The tension in the air was thick, but I just ate my dinner like we were strangers, and she didn't seem to know how to deal with it. The next few days were more of the same. She cooked more. She tried to talk more. She even asked if I wanted to go out with her, like we were still a couple. But I stayed neutral, detached, refusing to engage. Her efforts were like trying to patch a hole in a sinking boat with tape. She was trying, but she couldn't fix something that had already broken beyond repair. And the more she tried, the more I pulled back. It wasn't that I hated her, or that I wanted to hurt her. I just didn't care anymore. Whatever was left between us had eroded, and I wasn't going to pretend it hadn't. Amanda was frustrated, but she didn't know how to fight it. She didn't know how to break through the wall I'd built, and she certainly didn't understand that I wasn't going to play her game anymore. All I could do was keep my distance, keep my silence, and let her come to terms with the fact that nothing would change unless she started facing the truth. I spent the afternoon hiking alone. I needed the space, the silence, the time to think without the weight of Amanda's questions hanging over me. It was easier being outside, away from the house, away from her. When I got home, the house felt quieter than usual. It was like she was trying to fill the empty space with something, but it didn't work. I found Amanda sitting on the porch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up as I approached, her eyes scanning me for something. Anything. "Where have you been?" Her voice was casual, but her posture wasn't. There was a tension in the way she sat, like she was bracing herself for something. I didn't give her much. "I cleared my head," I said flatly. Then I turned to walk inside without another word. She didn't follow me, but I could feel her eyes on me, sharp and searching. I didn't care. Over the next few days, Amanda started asking more questions, subtle ones at first. She'd want to know where I'd been, who I'd been with, what I'd been doing. At first, I'd brush her off with one-word answers or half-hearted explanations. But it didn't matter. She wasn't really asking because she cared. She was trying to figure out what was happening, what I was doing. And she didn't like the silence I was giving her. One night, as I was getting ready to head out for drinks with a couple of coworkers, she asked, her tone clipped, "You going out again?" "With who?" "Yeah," I replied, not looking up. "A few people from work." "You never tell me anything anymore," she said, the frustration seeping through. But there was something else under it, a quiet, underlying suspicion. I didn't respond. She didn't like it. I could feel her eyes on me, trying to dig into whatever it was she thought I was hiding. "You're not seeing someone else, are you?" she asked, her voice suddenly tight, like she was testing the waters. I didn't flinch. "No," I said, finally looking her in the eye, but there was no real emotion behind it. "I'm just doing my thing. You should try it sometime." That was it. I didn't offer more, and I didn't care if she was suspicious. She was grasping at something to explain the distance between us, but I wasn't going to feed into her need for control. She wanted to create a narrative that fit her need for answers, but I wasn't going to give her one. Amanda started to shift, becoming more sharp, more tense around me. Every conversation seemed like a test, every question a trap, and I wasn't interested in falling for it. At first, I thought she was just frustrated by my withdrawal, but the more she probed, the more I realized she wasn't just looking for answers. She was looking for something to explain how it had all gone wrong, how I had gone wrong. But she wasn't seeing what I was seeing. She wasn't acknowledging the things we'd both neglected. In the silence between us, I started feeling something else, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Empowered, detached, yes, but also free. I wasn't the one scrambling to keep things afloat anymore. I wasn't the one pretending everything was fine. For the first time in years, I was just existing. I didn't have to engage with her, didn't have to follow her emotional rules. She wanted control, and I wasn't giving it to her. And that felt like a small victory. I could feel the walls closing in on her, but I didn't care. The house had grown colder in the last few weeks, but the chill didn't bother me. It was just quieter now. I was learning to live in it. It started small, but I began to notice the shift in myself before anyone else did. I started dressing sharper, nothing too drastic, just a better shirt here, a cleaner pair of jeans there. I kept my hair more in check, used cologne that actually smelled good. Little things. But they felt like big things. It wasn't about impressing anyone, not really. It was more about not feeling invisible anymore, about holding some of the control I'd let go of for years. Amanda didn't seem to notice at first. She was too caught up in her own games, trying to reassert some kind of control over me. But it was happening. I was changing, and it showed in the way I carried myself. I wasn't the worn-out guy coming home to a house that felt empty anymore. At work, Lisa noticed first. She caught me in the hallway one morning as I was walking out of a meeting. "Hey, Jack," she said, flashing a smile. "You've been looking good. There's something different about you lately. What's your secret?" I couldn't help but smile. "I don't know, just getting my shit together, I guess." She raised an eyebrow. "Well, whatever you're doing, keep it up. You're carrying yourself with more confidence." It's a good look. I didn't respond to her comment right away, but it felt good. For the first time in a long time, someone outside of my marriage actually saw me. That evening when I got home, Amanda was waiting for me by the door, a forced smile on her face, like she was trying too hard to seem like the wife I used to know. She had changed too. Her approach was different now, more calculating. She asked me what I wanted for dinner and how my day had been, like she was tiptoeing around me, hoping for something. She even offered to make me my favorite meal, which I knew she hadn't made in months. I didn't respond immediately. I just stood there, looking at her, watching her shift uncomfortably under my gaze. It was clear she was trying to force some kind of intimacy, but it felt fake. She wasn't being herself. She was trying to be the person I used to want, but I didn't want her to be that person anymore. "I'm fine," I said, walking past her without offering more. "I ate at work." Her face dropped slightly, but she quickly masked it, trying to recover. "Well, I still want to make something for you." "It's no trouble." I didn't acknowledge her words. I just went into the living room and dropped my things on the couch, taking my time, letting the silence build between us. A few minutes later, she came into the room, sitting next to me on the couch. She reached for my hand, but I pulled it away before she could grab it. Her eyes widened, just slightly, but it was enough to show that she was losing ground. She looked at me like I was the one who had changed everything. "Why are you acting like this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't look at her. I didn't even want to engage. "I'm not acting any different. You just don't like the way I'm not responding." The words hung in the air. She didn't speak for a long time, and neither did I. There was nothing more to say. Her attempts to reconnect, to draw me back in, were starting to crumble. She was doing everything she could to regain control, but the harder she pushed, the more I pulled away. It wasn't even a conscious decision anymore. I had stopped playing the game she wanted me to play. The more composed and indifferent I became, the more I realized I didn't need her to validate me anymore. I wasn't looking for her approval. I was learning how to exist without it. The power was shifting, quietly, slowly. I could see the frustration building in her. It was in the way she started texting me more, trying to get me to engage in conversation, but I only gave her short, dismissive replies. She'd ask me to talk about my day, and I'd answer with, "It was fine," or "Nothing special." She hated it. I could see it in the way she'd leave the room abruptly after a few failed attempts, trying to hide the crack in her facade. She wasn't used to this version of me, the version that didn't need her anymore. And somewhere, deep down, I felt a shift in myself too. I was starting to understand the kind of power I had been giving away, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared to keep it. We hadn't planned on going to the party, but somehow, Amanda had talked me into it. Maybe she thought it would be a chance to show that everything was fine between us, like nothing had changed. I didn't care. I went because it was easier than making a scene. And honestly, I didn't have anything better to do. The moment we arrived, I found a group of friends, a few coworkers mixed in with the usual crowd. I started talking to some of the guys from work, mostly about nothing, sports, the latest news, the kind of mindless chatter that I used to get caught up in. It was a relief, honestly. It felt like a break from the tension that had become my life at home. Amanda was quieter than usual. She hovered around the edges of the conversations, glancing at me now and then. After a while, she made her way over and slipped her arm around me, pulling herself close like she was trying to stake her claim. I didn't move. I didn't pull away either. I just kept talking, trying not to let her possessiveness get to me. One of my colleagues, Greg, glanced over at us and smiled. "You two seem close," he said, teasing but not unkindly. I looked at Amanda for a second, her arm still draped over my shoulder, and then I looked back at Greg. "We used to be," I said, my tone flat. The words hung there for a second. Amanda's grip on me tightened, but she didn't say anything. I could feel the tension shift, like something had broken in her. She pulled her arm away slowly, almost reluctantly, but I didn't care enough to try and close the gap. Greg looked between the two of us, clearly sensing something was off, but he didn't push it. He just nodded and went back to his conversation. I could hear Amanda's breathing, shallow, as she stepped back, her face set in that hard, controlled mask she always wore when she was trying to hide what was really going on. The rest of the night was a blur. Amanda stayed close, but I could tell she was more withdrawn. She kept glancing at me like she was trying to read me, trying to figure out where things had gone wrong. I didn't play along. I didn't look at her the way I used to. It was like she wasn't even there. When the party ended, we got in the car, and the silence was thick with what we hadn't said. "Why did you have to do that?" Amanda finally asked, her voice low, tense. "Why did you have to say that in front of everyone?" I stared out the window. "You're the one who wrapped your arm around me like that, Amanda. You wanted everyone to think we were fine. I didn't pretend." She let out a sharp breath, her fingers gripping the steering wheel so tight her knuckles were white. "You ruined everything, Jack. You just had to say that, didn't you? You just had to make it clear to everyone that this was over." I didn't answer right away. I knew what she was trying to do, bait me into some kind of emotional response, to get me to apologize or explain myself. But I wasn't going to fall for it, not anymore. "We've been over for a while, Amanda," I said, my voice even, calm. "You just didn't see it." She didn't respond at first. Her grip on the wheel tightened, her knuckles going white. Then she let out a long, shaky breath, her eyes never leaving the road. "You really think this is it? You're just done with me?" I could hear the hurt in her voice, but it didn't move me. It didn't make me feel guilty anymore. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I am." The words felt final, like a door closing that I didn't want to open again. Amanda was silent for a while, and I let her be. There was no anger, no shouting, just a heavy, suffocating silence. But I felt something else too, a strange mix of relief and guilt. Relief because I was done pretending, done with the game she'd been playing. Guilt because I knew how much it hurt her, but I couldn't pretend I cared enough to fix it. We drove the rest of the way home in silence, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. A few days after the party, Amanda tried again. I knew it was coming. It always did. She couldn't stand the silence between us. She needed it to mean something, to have a solution, to make everything fixable. So she reached out, trying to get a conversation going, like nothing had changed. I was in the kitchen, making coffee, when she walked in. "Jack," she started, her voice softer than it had been in a while. "Can we talk? I think we can still fix this. We don't have to keep drifting apart." I looked at her, meeting her eyes for the first time in days. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even upset. I was just done. I took a breath, set the mug down, and gave her a blunt response. "I stopped playing your game." Amanda's expression faltered, just for a second, but she quickly regrouped, her voice steady, almost pleading. "What does that mean?" "Jack, we've been through so much together. I don't want to give up on this." I shook my head slowly. "It means I'm done pretending like things are fine when they're not. It means I'm done with the way you've controlled everything. You don't care about us. You care about having me. You want me to jump through your emotional hoops, to fit your rules, and I'm not doing it anymore." Her eyes started to well up, but I didn't react. I didn't let her bait me into a fight. "You're wrong," she said, her voice shaking now. "I do care about us, Jack. I do. I just—" She paused, trying to gather herself, but I could see it in her eyes, the realization that I wasn't going to give her the response she wanted. She wasn't going to make me feel guilty. "Respect is a two-way street," I said, cutting her off. "You never cared about mutual effort. You only cared about control, and I'm done being part of your game. I'm done chasing something that was never freely given." Her face crumpled for a second. She opened her mouth like she was going to say something, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she just stared at me, her chest rising and falling with each breath. She wasn't used to this. She wasn't used to me being calm, collected, and completely detached. And I could see the shift in her, the small crack in the armor she'd built around herself. For the first time, she wasn't the one holding the strings. She wasn't the one manipulating the situation. It was me, and she didn't know how to handle it. "I didn't ask for any of this," she finally whispered, her voice barely audible, like she was talking to herself now. "I just wanted things to be okay." "You don't get it," I said quietly. "You only wanted things to be your way. You never gave a damn about what I needed, and now I'm not going to pretend anymore. I'm done." The words hung in the air between us, thick and heavy. Amanda's eyes were glossy, but I didn't look away. I didn't soften. I wasn't going to let her pull me back in. Not this time. She took a step back, her face pale, and I saw the wave of emotions hit her. Confusion, hurt, frustration, but no real understanding. She wasn't asking for a solution anymore. She was asking for an explanation. But I wasn't going to give her one. She'd never listened to my explanations before. It didn't matter now. "Why?" she finally managed, her voice breaking. "Why are you doing this?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Because I've realized I can't keep chasing something that doesn't exist. You didn't love me the way I needed to be loved, Amanda. You loved me the way you needed to control me." I paused, watching her face, watching the realization start to sink in. "And I'm not playing that game anymore." She was silent, her eyes wide, like she was searching for the right words to fix this, to get me back. But there was nothing. There was no answer. I felt a strange mix of relief and guilt. Relief because I was finally standing up for myself. Relief because I wasn't pretending anymore. But guilt too. Guilt because I knew this would break her. But I wasn't responsible for that anymore. Amanda stood there for a long moment, her face crumpled with emotion. But she didn't say anything else. She couldn't. And when she finally turned and walked away, I knew it was over. The silence was final. The distance between us had grown too wide, too deep, and for the first time in years, I was okay with that. I had walked away from a love that wasn't love anymore, and that was the hardest part of all. A few days after our conversation, Amanda made one final attempt. She couldn't leave it alone. She couldn't let go of the illusion we'd built. We were at a mutual friend's house for a small gathering, and Amanda had been playing her part all evening, putting on a smile, talking to everyone like nothing had changed. But when the conversation turned to us, just casually as it always did, she took her shot. "Jack's been emotionally cruel to me," she said, her voice just loud enough for a few people to hear. "I've tried everything, but he just doesn't care anymore." I felt the eyes of our friends turn toward me. A few of them shifted uncomfortably, but I wasn't buying her act, not this time. I stood up slowly, letting the room go quiet. I wasn't going to let her play the victim one more time. "I didn't humiliate you," I said, my voice calm even. "You did that to yourself by playing a game that was never fair. You manipulated everything, Amanda, and now you're acting like you're the one who's been wronged." She blinked, taken aback, like she hadn't expected me to call her out in front of everyone. For a split second, I could see the walls crack. The perfect facade she'd built for herself, of the hurt wife, the one who tried everything, was slipping. "You're the one who never listened," I continued. "You've been trying to control everything about me for years, and I'm not playing along anymore. This," I gestured between us at the silence that had settled in the room, "is on you." Amanda's face twisted for a moment, then she turned away, her eyes narrowing as she fought to hold back the anger and hurt. But the act was gone, and for the first time in months, I could see the real her, the one she didn't want anyone to see. "I'm done," I said, my voice cutting through the air like a knife. "I'm not pretending anymore." I turned and walked out, leaving the room behind me. There were no protests, no attempts to change my mind, just the sound of footsteps trailing behind me as I made my way to the door. I didn't look back. I packed my things quietly, methodically. Each item I placed in the bag felt like a weight lifting off my chest. The last few years had been a slow grind, a constant tension, and now, finally, I was free of it, free of her games. I didn't have a destination in mind when I left, but it didn't matter. I was done chasing something that required me to earn it. As I walked out the door, Amanda was standing in the hallway, watching me with wide, disbelieving eyes. For the first time, I saw her face, raw and vulnerable, without the mask she'd worn for so long. She opened her mouth, but I didn't wait for her to speak. I didn't need to hear her say anything. The silence between us had said it all. I walked away, knowing I was finally free. And as the door closed behind me, I felt the weight of everything I had carried for so long lift. There was no going back, and for the first time in years, I was okay with that.